Hello and welcome. It's variables. Okay, so what are variables? Let me create a class here and let's name it variables. And we're here PSV to get my main. So what are variables? Variables, I guess, like if you studied math before, you can see you always have like x is equal to this and x is equal to 9 or whatever x is. So x, it's just a similar thing, but in programming here, variables holds data for you. Variables are things that holds data for you. Say you have your number 100, but you want to save it, you want to store it somewhere. So when you want it, you just remember that name, so you don't have to remember the figure itself. You can say x is equal to 100 and x is your variable. But unlike in other programming languages, in Java, if you have a variable, you have to tell the data type it is. You remember in my previous video, I told you about data types. You need to tell whether it's an int, or x is a byte, or x is a short, or whatever data type it is that you want. So before I say more about that, variables, you can have it in two ways. So let's say I have x. You can declare x by saying, say, int x. But if I want to print x just by declaring it, let me run this and you see. Yeah, we're going to get an error. You can see the error right here. We're going to get an error because we only declared x, but we have not initialized it. So initialization means giving it a value to hold, giving it something to do. You just gave it a name. Hey, this is your name. This is a new variable, but you have not given it anything to do. So to initialize it, you could do on a new line, say x is equal to 10. Now you put the colon at the end. Or you could just initialize it inside on the same time you're declaring it. So you declare int x is equal to 10. And now let's take this line off. If we print it, Control R. Yes, you get, oh, okay, I'm printing the wrong program. I'm printing Mario. If you print it, yeah, you can see it's 10 here. So that's the difference between declaration and initialization if I just compacted it. So declaration is if you say, hey, I want a variable called x, or say name. So maybe we can say, I want a string called name. And initializing it would be to say name is equal to whatever name you want. And you put it in the bracket. So let's say, in this case, I want the new code. That's the name of the person, or whatever name it is, John, or whoever the name is. And then you put a semicolon at the end. The same thing if it is a number, you can say x is equal to 10, as I said earlier on. And yeah, that's declaration initialization. And can you change variables, the values that they hold? Yes. So look at up here, we have x is equal to 10. If I come here and say x is equal to 20, yeah, and then I print it. So let's run this. See what you're going to get. X is 20 because it runs the program. Java, the JVM runs the program from top to bottom. So first in line 5 we say x is 10, but in line 6 we say x is 20. So the most recent one, or the closest line to the line that just came before print x, the printing, is what is going to be printed. So x was the most recent, it's in line 6, and x is 20 is in line 6, and this is 10 is in line 5. So it matters the order of your data and updating them. And if you don't, there are some instances you can make x a constant or a final value where you can't change it, and we'll get to that later, and don't worry. So that's variables, initializations, and declarations. So there are different type of data types in Java. So like an int, or a float, or a short, or a double. So which one do you use at what time? If you want to stay a decimal value, a value that is like this point, this, you'll be better off using something like a float or a double. Use a float if you want to do something that you don't really care about. So no care for precision, you use a float. And you use a double if you do care about precision, because both float and double stores decimal point numbers or floating point numbers. So a double would have more precision in rounding numbers for you, in handling decimal numbers for you. Yeah, so that's your float and double. And exactly to see which one to use, let me give you a quick shot at this. So let's say this wasn't an x, wasn't an int, and it was a byte. Say a byte x is equal to 10, and I'm gonna run this program. Yeah, x is 10 and it is printed here. Actually, let me make this like this. X is and then plus x. So when you run it, that's right, x is 10. Okay, so let's come back to the program, and I'm going to say I want x to hold a number, and that number is 128. So you can see Java is already underlining it. It would not allow me to do it, because if you remember, I show you how to look at the size of a data type in Java, because byte can only hold numbers that are less than or equal to 127, negative or positive. So if you are trying to store any number that is over 127, byte can handle it. So you might have to use an int or a long, or yeah, those types. So that is what you should consider if you're trying to store data into some variables. But if it was an int, I could say int is equal to 1000, and that is int, let's say y, int y is equal to 1000, and I can handle it because int can handle numbers that big. And if you forgot, I will remind you how to get the size of the data types. You can just do sysout, system.out.println, and you are going to type the data type. So in this case, I'm going to do byte, all caps, and then we will run it. And you can see the size of byte is 1. It will give you the size of byte. Let me add a string here, size of byte. Yeah, and then if you run it, size of byte, oh man, I need to give it space here. Space is space. Size of byte is 1. And the same way, if you want an int, you can do sysout, size of int is, actually you should go and watch my previous video because I showed all those things there. I shouldn't be wasting your time here. You do integer dot bytes, and when you run this, it's going to tell you the size of an integer. And actually, if you get the size, that might not be meaningful. You want the min or the max, right? So you can say int.min or max. So if you just type m in Java, IntelliJ will know that, hey, you want the minimum value. So if you do integer.max value and then run it, so you can see integer has like a lot of like words, numbers that you can store in it. So let's say byte.max, and then you see what that one is going to give us. See, the maximum number that byte can handle is 127, as you can see right here. And yeah, that's how to get it. And that's pretty much it on how to use variables. You declare it, you initialize it, and if you want to know the size, you can use integer.min, byte.min or max. And if you want to name or a string, you can just say string, and then you name it whatever it is, and then you can give the name to it, or the new code, something like that. And also there's a char data type. A char is just going to store 1. This is not about data types. So that's pretty much about this video. If you did like it, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.